Yes, and we should be live.
Are we live?
Should we?
Let me go to my...
I'm going to assume that we are live. So hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. Today is a Quick Connect Live session. And Quick Connect Live sessions are sessions whereby we speak about a specific topic. So there's no like curriculum or what, but we're just getting together. We're going to explore a topic together. And that's how we run our Quick Connect Live. So Patrick, thanks for joining us. You're joining us here for the first time today. Maybe just the introduction amongst the four of us, and then we can get into the topic. Maybe I'll tell you what the topic is first. Okay, so the topic today is on creating psychological safety. And this was birthed out of our previous session, right? So our previous session, we talked about imposter syndrome. And from imposter syndrome, we talked about authenticity and vulnerability. And while we were talking about authenticity and vulnerability, then the term psychological safety came up many times. And someone said, hey guys, this is great, but I don't quite know how to create psychological safety, even though we talked a lot about psychological safety. So that's what we're here to talk about and explore today, which is what is psychological safety, how do we create it, first of all. So let's go around. Ethan, you want to start first?
Yeah, sure. Hi everybody. Ethan here. So I started this with Alex all the way back. I think back in April during the circuit breaker period. Because we wanted to make it a little bit more interactive, and then eventually it went from recorded videos to live videos, right? And we had this Tuesday night thing, and then it went from weekly to bi-weekly, every fortnight. Thankfully, thanks to our schedule, we still can maintain this for quite a while. What I do is, if you can look at this is Tom, also known as the Office Matters. I focus a lot on helping companies get rid of office politics and creating super collaboration. So it's a lot on how does power politics work? How do people actually feel safe? How do people actually can have their communication done in the right way? So how to be responsible with your communication. So that's what I do.
And super collaboration is a new thing, right?
Yeah, it's quite a new, it's like last month kind of thing. No, because we geared it towards companies. And so we've already have like one workshop and a couple of others in the pipeline already.
Yeah. So I remember we were having this conversation about 2 weeks back, right? And you were like, well, so excited. There's this new thing about super collaboration. I just trying it. It's quite fun.
Yeah, it's actually like, because I was previously creating something for the individuals, for the people to be able to learn how to get past office politics. And then somebody said like, hey, actually it's better if you just sell to companies, right? I was like, fine, right? So super collaboration came as about. Right now, as we're working on this, actually today's topic is really useful for me also because this discussion might lead to me also being able to help people measure psychological safety at the workplace. Measurable systems rather than just surveys.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Thanks. Okay, so I'll go next, then I'll pass it on to Jeff. So my name is Alex. Patrick, you've already met me. The rest already know me, so that's fine. I don't know what else.
What about our audience online?
Okay, so to everyone else who's online, my name is Alex. I run Strengths Alchemy. I run the Strengths Finder Singapore Network, and the Strengths Finder Singapore Network is focused on helping people to discover, develop. Okay, let me say it again. Is to discover, decipher, and develop your strengths and talents. So three, you need to first be able to know what your talents are. You need to decipher, know what they are, and then you'll be able to develop them. So three things, right? I like to say that I help people do as part of the meetup group. And yes, cool. Eugene joining us.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi,
Okay.
Eugene.
We're just going round of introduction. Jeffers.
Next one is Jeffers.
Okay. Hi everybody. I'm Jeffert. Friends of Alex, Ethan, and whoever whom we have acquaintance. What do I do? Yeah, I'm not a civil servant.
Friends.
Yeah, civil servant working in the public service. So really doing more on L&D work in terms of the leadership as well as policy and governance. Personal interest includes more on resilience and well-being. Also licensed in certain psychometric profiling, which is slightly different from StrengthsFinder, which is imagenetics, right? So Alex and I has quite a number of conversations of looking at things at different dimensions and see what is helpful sometimes to look through different lenses, right? So that's from me.
Okay, so the host, come on, host, arrow people.
Yeah, host or
Oh, you.
please introduce yourself.
Yeah,
Time to catch up.
I'm Patrick, and actually my day job is a pastor. I work in the church, and I do have a number of different kinds of experiences and exposures as a facilitator and facilitating group coaching in, I don't know, different kinds of systems in the past. Right now, actually, one of the main things I focus on is helping people one-on-one. And it's in the context of inner healing, but I incorporate a lot of therapy approaches such as EFT.
Oh, EFT, cool.
Yeah. And so I've been seeing a lot of amazing results in the past 2 years. People getting breakthrough in not only their emotions, but in their health, in their relationships, in their finances. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.
So I actually Patrick reached out to me on LinkedIn, right? So we spoke a little bit, and then I discovered he does this EFT thing, which was really cool. So I invited him to join us. Eugene, quick introduction about yourself before we start.
Eugene here, second session today. Don't really know what to expect. Day job is in IT. Yeah, just here to listen and learn.
Awesome. So Eugene, I think you were the one who mentioned about we didn't really cover psychological safety in enough depth.
Yeah.
So today's for you.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
For sure.
Okay, cool. Hey, thanks everyone. So that's the introduction. I think we can start about psychological safety.
Can we get a researcher to bring on his knowledge about psychological safety?
So
Which researcher?
No, the input guy.
Huh?
Because the last round when Jeffers shared with us about authenticity and vulnerability, he was like researched and presented. So I was like,
No, we were just talking about common definitions lah.
yeah.
But today I didn't do my research. So I'll jump off whoever will start first lah.
Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll just start with a very simple Wikipedia research. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You've already done that. Okay.
Yes, I was prepared for any kind of mistakes to happen today. So.
Well done.
Yeah. No, so I just want to start the topic also with the fact that a lot of people don't recognize what psychological safety actually feels like. Most of us have never experienced this before, or we think we've experienced it, but we actually don't know it. So there's being able to show and employ oneself without fear of negative consequences of self-image, status, or career. So we talk about Kant's definition, right? We look at this. So it's talking about the ability to actually speak fully about yourself. So there's 4 stages of psychological safety. If you look at it, if you read it, somebody actually managed to put his website on Wikipedia, which is interesting. Included safe to learn, safe to contribute, and safe to challenge status quo. Okay, so if you look at this, it gives you a pretty good idea of the different types of psychological safety that people talk about. So this actually, there's also the levels of vulnerability that we need to talk about. And it's actually related back to psychological safety, right? You only can go to deeper layers of vulnerability once you actually have the psychological safety to go further in and deeper in. So that's why it's very important for us to talk about psychological safety today before we talk about the next topic, which is vulnerability, which also relates back to authenticity that we talked about 2 weeks ago. Because psychological safety is actually a lot more complex than what people think it is. Even for me personally, I didn't even know what the deepest level of psychological safety was until about 1 month ago. And this is an honest statement. Like, I thought I was psychological safe until 1 month ago, I experienced something that I've never felt before. I was like, wow.
Mm.
And that is actually very interesting, right? So that level of psychological safety is something that even like I don't have a lot of access to. And so I want to riff off this thing, and I want to get people to talk about their versions of psychological safety and what they felt before. So for me, right, psychological safety is the ability to be myself. But when I talk about being myself, I don't mean enablement. I don't mean enabling me to be all over the place, enabling me to be like, because my ADHD is very strong, right? Like I can be all over the place. It doesn't mean allowing me to be that 100% and not reining me in, right? A lot of people think of psychological safety as complete freedom from all responsibility. Instead, I view psychological safety very differently. I view it as you are accepted regardless of what you do. However, you will have to take the repercussions of any of your actions.
So the willingness to I think we talk about responsibility quite a number of times, right?
Yes.
So it's the willingness to, well, like you just said, take the any consequence that comes out, whether, but I mean, when you talk about consequences can be good or bad at the same
Yes. So consequences is not necessarily a bad word, right? So all outcomes, right? Good or bad, credit as well as other things that you can get as a response to what has happened before.
So Ethan, you tend to go very quickly, very deeply. So I'm going to pull back a little bit, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the people who are on the call today. How would you define psychological safety? Let's start with Patrick.
I'm still quite blown away by Ethan's description. I thought, Ethan, you've really covered it very well. I don't know what to add to that.
First.
Sorry, what do you say, Alex?
I say that's why I need to stop Ethan from giving descriptions first, because after he gives it, everybody goes like, yeah, just whatever Ethan said. And I'm like, oh. So Patrick, give us a version of your own. I mean,
a story-based version, like your own personal life version.
Yeah, give us your version of, how would you describe psychological safety?
Well, if wow, okay. Nothing to prove, nothing to fear, nothing to hide.
I think it's very important as a pastor, right? I mean, to be able to speak with people and letting people feel psychologically safe in order to share some of these things with you or confide certain things with you.
Yes, yeah. Definitely, people must feel safe. Safe, yeah. Then they will open up. Yeah, I think one part of that is helping people feel that you will not be quick to judge. Yeah. So slow to judge, quick to listen. Yeah. And it sometimes need to be very intentional about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Patrick. Eugene, how about you? How would you describe psychological safety?
I don't actually have a definition for that, because I personally, I don't know. I feel like I have the definition for what is not psychological safety rather than psychological safety.
Let's start with that.
Because I think
Yeah.
non-psychological safety is like you are in a place where you want to say certain things, but you are very mindful about what you're trying to say. Yeah. So like you want to share certain thoughts, certain ideals, certain whatever things, but then somehow when you're trying to say it out, right, you realize that, okay, no, I better not say it lah. Yeah, because people might not be accepting, people might not be willing to actually listen to your point of view. Yeah.
Okay, so if I were to flip it on its head, psychological safety is when people are willing to listen to you.
Willing to listen not just listen, but with a very open mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Open-minded, being able to listen. Okay.
Mm.
Thanks. I'll go next. If not, then Ethan will say that I always, as a host, share my own opinion. So, for me, psychological safety is a little bit along the lines of what everyone has said. Ability to be able to freely share what we're thinking. I think one part of it is also the ability to disagree, right? And I think I go back to the time when I felt like I was being very vulnerable and the whole thing went to bits, right? So for me, what I felt was important for psychological safety is when I'm able to disagree, share what I'm saying, even if the other person continues to disagree with me without judging me.
Mm.
And I think that's if I were to put it together, probably what I see psychological safety as. So I think if we can disagree, you can have your own opinions still, I can have my own opinion, but we don't have that negative, judgmental kind of a vibe that, just because we see things differently, that one of us is bad.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I think if we can see that, well, both that's different, without one being bad, I think that is kind of being psychologically safe for me. Yeah. The first.
Yeah, so I would, I mean, there's some similarities, but I thought I liked I saw one definition was psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes. And I think that spells very true because personally, I mean, even in any kind of setting, in a group setting, you like also a bit like what Eugene said, right? Am I like afraid of speaking up? The moment I speak up, I'm being judged, and the next time I speak up, maybe it pops up in my performance appraiser that you talk too much. So that in a sense, there's consequence in saying things. Then the next time it's like, okay, then I don't say anything lah. So whether that kind of climate, I mean, on both end, right? One is also whether I feel safe. On the other end is whether the environment supports me to feel safe lah, or the members provide that climate for me to feel safe. Yeah, so that's my kind of definition lah. So introverts, right, also relatively quiet, right? Even more quiet when it's not safe lah. Yeah.
Thanks. So we kind of have an idea of what psychological safety is, and I guess it converges to some degree. So tell me if I'm taking this in the opposite direction from where you had in mind, Ethan. Actually, today's your show. I was thinking.
I don't know if my show. I don't know if my show.
We always say that when we are the prepared speaker. Right?
Yeah, I always say.
Let's see how it goes.
Okay, so there are a couple of things in my head, right? Based on conversation. One is that there are many different contexts for psychological safety. There's one-on-one within the family. There is, of course, the church context, right? When there's needs to be there's confidentiality. Then there's the work context, right? So different contexts probably show psychological safety differently. I'm going to start by throwing a question, right? How do we create psychological safety with people? And at some level, I think that it's very much close. It's very much related to rapport. I mean, for a start, right? So, okay, yes, Ethan's giving me that look.
No, I'm gonna be the last to answer because, like, as usual.
Yeah. Okay. So, one of the things that I was thinking is, how does a person feel psychologically safe to speak up whatever they have in mind without the feeling that there's going to be a consequence? Is when there is rapport. If on a one-on-one context, there's rapport between two people that allows people to feel safe that, hey, you are like me, and therefore I can speak and you're listening. So I think rapport is probably a very big piece of creating psychological safety. And that's why I thought we could start with the conversation today. What do you think?
Yeah, I think defining rapport would be a great way to start for everybody. Like, what is rapport to you? What does rapport feel like for you?
I'll start lah. Maybe it's a feeling of connection and trust. I think that in itself is rapport lah for me. If I feel connected with you, my level of trust also goes up lah. When my level of trust goes up, definitely I feel safe to review more, because I think if I think just to there's this thing called the trust equation. I don't know whether people heard about that. From the book called Trusted Advisor, I think. I think there are 4 components, right? One is credibility, right? It has to do with the words we speak. The second component is reliability, it has to do with the actions. When you trust people, it's consistent action, and this person is quite dependable. Then there's also one in terms of it's called intimacy, which refers to the safety or security that we feel when entrusting someone with something. So this person never violate my confidentiality lah. So I think the initial rapport, of course, the feeling of connectedness will start to build whether like, and there's one element I didn't talk, it's called self-orientation. So whether or not the conversation focus is focused on myself, the person's self, or actually the focus is not talking about other people lah.
Hello.
So,
Hi.
hi. Yeah. So I feel that the trust worthiness will come about if like some of these connection are there lah. And I think I don't know, there's this famous saying like people don't really care what you know until they show how much you care. So that felt true lah, in terms of that connection comes when you feel that sense of care lah, and trust. Yeah. So that's my
Very cool.
view.
Cool.
Jeffrey, don't mind I help you pull out the equation.
Oh yes, thanks.
Okay. Pilin, just to get you up to speed, we're talking about what psychological safety is.
Yeah, thank you. I was listening offline and yours sound so exciting, so I decided to join.
Just
So that's why I'm here.
Okay. Who's next? Actually, we don't really need to go round robin. Anyone has any opinions, just throw it.
I'll just go last.
Yeah. Eugene, anything? What do you think? What creates psychological safety for you?
Psychological safety to me, right, is like I will test water first. Usually lah. Like when I'm talking to someone, I'll test water first. Try and put in a little bit of sensitive topic inside and then see how people react. Yeah. When I don't feel psychologically safe is when people have, like, they try to throw their opinions on you. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, maybe this is not the person I'm going to open up to. Yeah. So that's, I don't really know what psychological safety is, even until now. I don't have any proper definition. But I do know that, like, in order for me to share comfortably, there needs to be a certain amount of, like, openness in the conversation. Acceptance lah, basically. Yeah.
Okay. Haley?
Sorry, what's the question?
What is rapport?
What
would
is
you define-
rapport?
Yeah, what does it feel like? What does it look like to you?
Oh, it's all rapport, right? It feels to me like having chemistry with the other person, like a connection. It's almost like chemistry. Like you are like me, I'm like you, and I think when that happens, I feel that I can open up to the person. But usually I will also observe the person. If the person generally comes across a little bit more judgmental and imposing on opinions or values on other people, I know that this is not the kind of person I would like to open up to lah. If I do that, I'll just be shooting myself in the foot. Sorry, who is violating a boundary?
No. I'm laughing because a lot of people do a lot of kind things through benevolent boundary violation. So I'm laughing because there are a lot of people who cross boundaries, and then we were talking about it about what, 2 months ago?
Yeah.
Yes. And then when you tell them about it, right, then they'll tell you there are good intentions.
Yeah, it's for your good. Can't you see?
Yes, exactly. Then I will remember Alex's famous line. The road to hell is lined with good intentions. So I'll use that line in a very nice way. I haven't talked about how to bring that across.
Awesome. Okay, you threw me off. I do not know what I was going to say anymore.
You only remember his famous line.
Break state.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So yeah, I think one of the things that I talked about rapport was because I think that rapport helps to create psychological safety, right? So if we knew how to build rapport with people, we know how to build rapport with people well, that probably helps people get to a state of psychology, or at least be able to, I was gonna say rightfully or wrongfully, feel psychologically safe. Why rightfully or wrongfully is because helping people to feel safe may not necessarily mean that they are safe, because that's exactly how con artists work, right? They make you feel psychologically safe, they rope you in and boom, you're dead, right? You're put in, but do you feel psychologically safe? You did. And they are very good at creating that feeling of psychological safety, even though, you know, it's all just setting you up for the kill.
There's also a slight difference between, because I think when you say it's easier to create from a one-on-one setting, right? Because you only got like one point of contact, and rapport might be easier. But in a large group setting or in a team setting, it might be harder to establish because then of course you need processes that come in and things like that to support that . But I think most challenges people face is usually in large group. How do you get I mean, people will look at one another, right? Then like, okay, he's not speaking up, so I'm also not speaking up. Then I think what they call social proof, is it, or something like that? Yeah, you look or conformity, or that conformity, right? One of the biases. Yeah.
Again, I think everyone is just waiting for that first person who's willing to be vulnerable to see how the group reacts.
Usually
before they
that's me.
decide.
Usually
that's it. Actually, Palin does that a lot too. And Valerie does that a lot. If you all remember who Valerie is.
The one brave soul, right? The one brave soul who
you just
venture
need
out.
one brave soul who's willing to be vulnerable to see how the group reacts before people decide if there is psychological safety. And I think that's generally how it happens.
So
in
interesting.
groups.
So when Alex said that I do it a lot, right? I don't even feel vulnerable doing it.
This is where I'll go talk about it later on. No worries.
Yeah, I don't know whether is it because of my job as a trainer. So Jeffrey is very right to say that in the group, it's even harder to achieve that. And I also realized that it really starts with the facilitator or the trainer taking the first step to be vulnerable first, and then hopefully the participants will also do likewise. But it's not guaranteed that they will open up and share their struggles or challenges.
I was literally judged by my one participant for being too vulnerable.
Oh dear,
happens,
that sounds really. Would you like to share?
I can. So I was because I share quite a bit about myself in the stories, because then people can relate, right? So I talk about conflicts. How do you get past conflicts? How do you deal with conflicts? So I was sharing quite a bit of stories about myself and how I learned to get out of it, so that people can get a context of how you go from timid and conflict averse to actually conflict loving, right? Like I love conflicts now, not because of anything. What happens is that conflicts are actually the place where you learn most about the other person. But it's about how do you mitigate the conflicts rather than anything else. So there's another term called therapeutic rupture that I love to bits, that I talk a lot about, but we're not going to talk about it today. But it's one of those things which then, like sharing that story, one of the feedback, only one person in the whole group, like everybody else loved it. The person talked too much about himself. The trainer talked too much about himself. I don't see the relevance of what he's talking about. Everybody else thought it was like very relevant. They could understand the storyline, the story arc. There's one person who was super angry against it. Like, you shouldn't be talking so much about yourself. You should be talking more about us. Okay.
And I thought it's interesting, Ethan, you mentioned about conflict, right? And I remember at one point of time, we made a distinction between confrontation and conflict, right? So there can be confrontation without conflict.
Oh, absolutely. But I say I love conflicts because conflicts are inevitable. And when you confront and you mitigate the conflict before it escalates, it's really where the key is at. Because if you end up in a yelling match, it doesn't solve anything, of course. But if you end up with a very good conversation about what was about to happen, which was a yelling match, it's very powerful. But this also lines up with the level 4 of the security. Let me just pull it back up, right? The 4 stages of psychological
Something
safety.
about challenge safety, is it? Challenger
Yes.
safety. Yeah.
Yep, you can challenge it you can feel the challenge, you can challenge safely. So this is something that I've learned very, very clearly actually in the last month plus. Partly also because of the office matters, partly also because of some personal life things, right? Challenger safety. How safe am I in challenging the status quo? And in Singapore, I usually don't get this whatsoever. The moment I say, hey, may I just ask a pack, right? You get whacked left, right, center within the moment. Especially if you ask a question that challenges the teacher or challenges the leader or challenges somebody. And that's something that is a very real thing culturally. And therefore, a lot of places do like psychological safety.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was thinking, okay, my I have strategic in my top 5, right? So my brain goes in like multiple directions at the same time. So first thought was that challenges are inevitable, and how challenges are dealt with real time in the group is partially what determines whether or not there's psychological safety, because everybody's watching. So that's my first point. My second point is actually a story, right? So you know, most of you who have been with me for a while know how my relationship with my bosses have been. So recently, because of us not getting the contract, we went for drinks and we were just talking with my colleagues, including one who joined us earlier this year. And I didn't realize that I actually challenged my boss a lot. And that was also because, you know, we have had 1 or 2 years of history with my boss, and I got frustrated with his degree of ambiguity. And I therefore need things to be very clear, and I'll challenge until I'm clear about what he's saying. So are you saying this or are you saying that? Do you mean this or do you mean that? If you're saying this, then it means that. So which is it? So that's the way that I kind of talk even to my boss at some stage. And my colleague came and told me, hey, Alex, you know, when the first time I joined the calls, right? So because we do video conferencing, right? Because we're a regional team. It's like I'm asking people, hey, who's this Alex? He's talking to the boss like that. Who is he? Is he some big shot? I'm like, no, really? So it's interesting because I'm not quite sure whether I felt that it was psychologically safe for me to challenge my boss. At that point of time, I was just frustrated enough with the lack of clarity that I confront, at least to my mind, I thought I confront in a non-hostile manner. To me, it was non-hostile. Maybe to other people, it seemed hostile. But it was like, I needed to know exactly what you mean when you say this.
Let me just jump in here. So I think one of the major things, I would like to cover this later on after we talk about rapport, because that is actually a very important point. And I think we can explore a bit more after everybody shares a little bit more about their version of rapport. That's a great topic to talk about.
Which point?
Your point that you can actually do that with your boss.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can come back to that later. So that was an interesting thing about how we got there, and that revelation when my colleague told me her first experience of how she saw me talking to my boss and what she thought about it. So that was like, oh really? Oh, okay.
So who is it? Eugene or Patrick hasn't shared yet? I can't recall. So who would like to go next?
Patrick hasn't shared it.
Patrick, yeah.
About rapport.
About rapport.
Not sure what to add, man. Like,
anything. Your personal experiences, your thoughts around it. You think that we're full of shit. Sorry. Oops. This space is welcoming any challenges.
You know, rapport is rapport is, I don't know. I mean, all that comes to my head is NLP terms: matching, mirroring, pacing. Yeah, but it's at a subconscious level, really. And a lot of times you don't really think of it. Yeah. And yeah, is that you feel the vibes. So it's at an energetic level, where you feel the vibes of a person, and you might not be consciously aware of it, but as you feel the vibes, that's where the connection takes place. Because it doesn't clash. Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of like seeing a picture of it. Yeah. So I don't know whether it makes sense to you.
Yeah.
What I say.
Yeah, and Patrick, actually, when I spoke about rapport, I had exactly that in mind, right? The NLP version of creating rapport. That if you're meeting someone for the first time, or even in a group, and you need to build a rapport and I guess psychological safety really, really quickly. Things like pacing, matching and mirroring, does help people to feel that chemistry that Kaylin talked about really quickly. And that actually helps people to feel safer and be more, they feel the connection better. And which is why I also brought in the point that, look, psychological safety can be misused by con artists. And I think that's what they do too, right? They listen to you, they talk to you, they match you, they mirror you, they match you even at the belief level sometimes. Say, oh, we all think the same way. Yeah, kind of things like that. And then, then they cheat you of your money and stuff. So I think there are certain skills and techniques like NLP introduces that can help us to create it. But of course, we need to make sure that we have the correct values and intention in place when we do all this. If not, then we are in the same category as con artists. Right.
Yeah, I like what you say, Alex, right? I mean, so that sense of connection, right, is what we want to create, right? But if you misuse the technique and it's not aligned with your values, then you're going to feel that inauthenticity, which is what we talked about last week, right? So rapport that creates because of who you are and show up according to your values will make you feel authentic as who you are, lah. But if you're doing just for the sake of manipulating, then of course, for some people, I don't know, their values match, right? So I can't say no to that, but you're gonna feel that little thing that is disconnected with incongruence.
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably the word, incongruence.
Incongruence, and that's when some people would feel like imposter. So if you did the entire thing, trying to manipulate people, you could feel like an imposter, unless maybe you were sociopathic, right? And you don't feel that way.
We have Nana here, so I'm very curious about what Nana thinks about what we just talked about, because we are talking about quite intense stuff right now. We're talking about rapport.
Yeah.
Rapport building, right?
Yep.
Okay. Rapport building is about how you make small talk with people, how you build connection with people, how you build trust with people. Okay, so we can start with, like, remember that when I suppose that when you first join this meeting, y'all will do small chit chat, like have you had dinner, or this small talk. These are a way of building rapport. Yeah, these are a way of building rapport. Okay, for people you don't know, of course, we always start with, have you eaten? When you go to when you meet your colleague, that's the first thing you say. Good morning. Have you eaten lunch? Have you eten breakfast? That is a way of building rapport. Yes, that's a way of building rapport. Of course, building rapport, there's a lot of things to it as well, like tonality. Your tonality, if you are showing empathy to people, that's a way of building rapport as well. Yeah. So rapport building is important, because that's how you are going to get along with people. If there's no rapport with let's say with someone, you can reject them easily. It's like when you receive a sales call, you don't know this salesperson, there's no rapport, you can reject them easily. But if you know this person, and this person, let's say you have a friend who's selling you, trying to sell you some MLM product, okay, because that's your friend, you got rapport with that person. So when the person tell you something, you may just entertain to buy 1 or 2 times, and then you run off. But at least you already buy that 1 or 2 times. If it's someone that you didn't know, you will just totally reject it. So that's the power of rapport. It gives you faith in that person. It gives you a trust feeling in that person. That, okay, whatever that person is saying, okay, I may not believe the product, but because this is someone that I know, I may just try it, give it a try. But if you don't know that person, definitely you won't be buying that MLM product from just some strangers on the street. Yeah. So to me, rapport building is important, very important. my boss, I quarrel with my boss. I always quarrel with my boss. So my boss tells me this. He said that, okay, the reason why we quarrel and we can still continue talking is because we have very good rapport. You don't go and do this to other people. If not, they will scold you. Yeah, that's what my boss tells me. That's my take on rapport, because during training, rapport is one of the things that I do training for. So this is what I always tell my people. So that is rapport building.
Cool. Thank you, Nana.
Yes.
Okay, we have just Mahesh joining us. I just wondered if Mahesh has anything to add to the idea of rapport.
I just joined, so give me
You need to give you some context, like you said the
Yeah,
rapport.
Ethan's terrible.
Drop the ball. That's the
Ethan.
first.
Ethan. You have zero rapport with him right now.
I just joined.
This is the test for quick reaction. Quick
Yes.
reaction.
No, I'm just having fun here. Sorry, I'm sorry for dropping the ball on you. It was actually meant to be a joke. Let me go back into what we talked about. I think rapport is a very interesting thing because it's very interesting why we are also talking about sales. If you notice, NLP and all these kind of things comes back into the picture. Rapport is a very strange thing. Anyway, hi Mahesh. Sorry for dropping the ball on you again.
I was waving hi to Jeff's son too.
Oh really? Oh my God.
You see?
Hello. Okay, that's also how you immediately have rapport with people. Being cute, right? So, okay.
You're not talking about yourself, right? I'm sure.
It
I'm not
only
talking about
works
myself.
when you're 4-year-old,
Only
not when
works
you're
with-
40.
Not too sure about that. That.
Okay,
Might
show
not be
us.
No,
Ethan.
not me. not me. I'm not talking about me. I'm just saying. One of the major things about this is that if you look at what psychological safety is about and what rapport is, right, it's that the other person has no ill intent towards you.
Mm.
We only conclude that. So it depends on whether you trust 100% first or you trust 0% first. So I think I just went through my 5th round of dealing with a con man. That was very tiring to deal with. And I'm saying this out loud, wondering whether he's watching this video. Just 5th round of dealing with another con man that I like, it's just so tiring. And watching them behave, and they're very good at building rapport, actually using your strengths. I was watching how he was doing this, and I was like, wow, I actually found out so many of the funny things. A lot of people who are 0% first will never trust this kind of people. So it depends on your character style. So you find psychological safety depending on whether you start with 100% or 0%. Because it's usually binary. Nobody starts with 50%. I've never met a person who starts with 50%. It's either 100% and deduct very quickly, or 100% and deduct very slowly, or 0% and slowly grow or quickly grow, right? Like it depends on where you are. But it's always 100 or 0. It's 1 or 0. Usually, that's what I see.
How about it's one with a very small piece? Because I mean, when we talk about vulnerability and trust, right? You don't trust a person with your entire
You're 0.
fortune.
You start
right?
with 0. Alex, you start with 0.
Okay, so that's 0, is it?
Yes, that's a 0-based person.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You start with, Mahesh?
So I have 50%.
Tell me more.
It's always 100% from my side. From their side is always 0. So it's 50%.
I love you, Mahesh. I love that fully. No, and that's exactly it, right? Okay, that actually is very on point. Usually, as a person, I'm the 100%. And if two sides are 100%, it's a wonderful rapport straight off the bat. Within 5 minutes, we're talking about our lives and our histories and interesting stories, right? But if we're doing 0% of both sides, small talk appears.
Correct.
So that's why it's very interesting. Once you actually understand how these things work, you start recognizing that rapport depends on the individuals as well. So yes, in some sense, if you notice, right? So Alex, you're actually a person who starts at 0. Because then you drop breadcrumbs for the person to see whether the person will follow and allow you to be yourself. Whereas what I do is I say the worst thing possible first and see how the person responds.
So I pass your test.
Why are we doing this talk right now?
I'm thinking of what's the worst thing that he said to me when I first met him now.
No, I would say the worst thing, right? Not you. Like I would say very vulnerable things like what's going on in my life, what's happening, like, and then see what the person responds is.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
As in the worst thing that's happening in your life.
Yeah. So
not like
what was that?
you're a terrible person.
Is that something like you will open up first and be vulnerable first?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
I'll be fully vulnerable with the other person first. I mean, that's actually quite hallmark of Ethan Xiao. So people have said that that's very typical of Ethan, to do this. So it's one of the things that people got used to, right? Like they know that the moment you start talking to me, I can share anything about myself with you, unless I don't trust you. Then suddenly I will just climb up and not talk to you at all, or small talk. So that's also part of psychological safety on one ground, right? Because somebody needs to be taking the first step of doing that. The next layer that is very interesting is where the other person responds. So benevolent boundary violation is a very common behavior that so people who know me knows that I've gone through something really, by right, most people have felt is highly traumatic for themselves. It's a marriage life issue that I went through, and most people have found it very traumatic. And for me, thankfully, I had a lot of support. I went through it pretty okay. But most importantly, what I've learned was that people like to tell me what to do with it. People love to tell me how to deal with it. It's like, it's my life. Why are you telling me what to do? Right? Right. So the number of advice I've gotten was about, I think 200 to 300 already so far. Like the moment I mention it, there's like, right? Like there's not even a space for me to talk about it. And then the more I try to caveat things and try to get them to, okay, can you see my point of view here or not? The more defensive I get, and the person starts throwing all the things at me, right? So I am safe to challenge, but at the same time, people run all over me. Hello again. This is the other son, right? Yeah. So here comes the part, right? Like benevolent boundary violation is the ultimate killer of rapport, even if you think you have very strong chemistry.
Okay, I'm just going to like point out something here right now, right? When someone usually brings a kid on, you immediately suddenly feel like this person is safe because of the way he deals with the kid. It's just something that popped up in my head, right? As we talk about psychological safety, you see Jeffers carrying his son, hugging him, showing wave. Then suddenly like, oh, this is a great guy. Can feel safe with him. Do you all get that? Do you all get that?
Yes, and I'm just wondering, is this one of the antique that comment will use? But Jeffers, I know you're not a comment.
It is
even if he carry a dog, we also think that he's a nice guy.
Yes.
Yes.
Kids and animals.
Yep. So that's actually a lot of techniques. So I noticed how, okay, so one technique that I know, okay, so this is, I'm going to share with you a pickup artist technique that I know of, right? So I've seen it work and it was amazing. Sob story for a man to try to attract a woman to mother him. Creates a lot of psychological safety because it seems like the guy wouldn't have any ill intent towards the woman.
So Ethan, Eugene's jaw just dropped when you said that.
I literally went WTF, like, what's happening?
That's rapport building. You're talking about selling yourself, rapport building. That's literally a method used by people.
Oh my gosh, okay.
So Ethan, we know you don't do that. We know you're not a con man, so you don't do that. Yeah.
These are real techniques used by people out there that are trying to get their way around. I've heard this story so many times from so many people who got hurt later on because the soap story was the main point in which the relationship was built upon. Rapport was built upon symptoms of vulnerability rather than true vulnerability.
Yeah, and I mean, when you are telling a sob story, you look like the victim, right? So the victim actually looks, how do I put it?
Innocent, looks non-ill intent.
Yes, non-threatening, right? And therefore, when you're approaching someone, and I think that's what a lot of con artists do, right? They'll have a sob story, or even people come and say, I got no money for food. It's a sob story, right? And it creates that, poor thing, probably he's not in a position to do me any harm. And then you feel a certain sense of safety when that happens.
I
Exactly.
think maybe it could also be that that person is coming more from sympathy than empathy.
Mm.
And then you get carried away by the sympathy, and then and therefore it could be on the wrong premise. You're starting the relationship. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. So these are important considerations that we need to have while talking about rapport as well, because rapport can be built through all the wrong means. And we talk about the word chemistry, right? The thing is that I don't really believe in the word anymore because there's this other term called trauma bonding, where you bond with people who have similar traumas to you or are like your parents. Even worse. Then you repeat the same cycle over and over again, right? So I'm very guilty of it, so therefore I can talk about it. So my exes were very similar to my mom in certain manners, but all the wrong ways. So I created a lot of drama in my life through those means, right? Like they don't have the self-control and a lot of other things that my mom has. But one of the major things about this is that I used to be attracted to women that were similar to my mom, but in all the wrong ways, like all the negative side of my mom. And it created a lot of trauma bonding that created a lot of issues along the way. But the chemistry was right. Is that really trust? Is there real psychological safety? All these questions are the things that we need to understand, that when we talk about the word bonding or like connection, what are we referring to specifically? Is it a form of connection that we're looking for, looking at? Or like, is it something that's created by certain gestures or behaviors? What are we succumbing to? And that's why psychological safety is such a weird thing, because so I was one of the co-founders of this psychological safety product called Empathy in a Box. I was co-creator as well as I was the co-founder of Tribeless. So it was actually all about empathy in a box. So it's all about, conversations around it. Of course, I've left the group. It's great. They're still doing great. However, so for me, my struggle was a lot of the conversations are first level psychological safety, the ability to just express your vulnerabilities. There's still a lot more things that you can go into when it comes to empathy and vulnerability. That psychological safety is a very complex concept on its own, that I find it very difficult for people to recognize and identify fully, because unless you felt the deepest sense of psychological safety, you wouldn't understand.
I mean, you shared a couple of examples, which is you can share your sob stories to be vulnerable, but it still goes back to the point that if you share the intent, right? If your sob story is a means of manipulating others, then it's going to come off as inauthentic now, or sooner or later when you get exposed, right? But then again, I was thinking more in the line is we have connection with people not only through stories of vulnerability. It could be simple things that we shared together, right? So like the last simple things like weekend, my friends and colleagues have kids, right? And they went to zoo and we were sharing interesting stories that I had a similar experience. And I thought those speak true, because you can have that psychological safety, but it's inauthentic. I think that's one thing where we can establish. And there's another one that is probably authentic because it speaks true to you. So sometimes I'm a bit wary about sometimes just using a bunch of techniques because it might misconstrue what your intent is, right? Is to create a false sense of safety, but then end of the day, if you just want to manipulate people, then you can get away once or twice, but sooner or later it will sort of catch up with you, because your imposter syndrome will haunt you, right? Because suddenly you feel that that's not who you are. And at some point in time, you will have that self-awareness.
I do have to say that having worked with conmen and worked under conmen, I don't see a lot of imposter syndrome in them. As in, I don't see a lot of the guilt in them. They are ultimate self-liars. So they build very strong rapport by lying to themselves first. There are multiple ways. We can even have a whole topic on how to identify conmen, but I don't feel very comfortable sharing it openly, because it also tells the conmen what I already know, and therefore what other techniques they can employ. I've already seen it in my fair share, but it's a real thing. It's rapport building through as a con man way of doing things is a real thing that we just have to be aware of. That rapport is not magical thing, right? It's something that can be generated, can be created by people, can be through trauma bonding, which is all the wrong reasons. it can be also through a lot of different means. But what is psychological safety? And that's the difference. Psychological safety is not necessarily rapport. It is deeper than rapport, and that's why it's a great topic for us to have.
Yeah. And I thought it's interesting the way the conversation is going. There are a couple of things, right? One is to recognize that psychological safety can be consciously created, right? I mean, that's exactly how Comment and all this do it. So the feeling of psychological safety, just be aware that it can be misused, right? So we are assuming that everyone here does not misuse, the creating of psychological safety for other people.
Nice people here.
Yeah, all nice people here, right? That's why you're here. If not, then I'm going to eject the person from this room. So the other thing that I thought was interesting is, let's assume that we've established that it can be manipulative and misused. Maybe we can also go a little bit into the title of today's topic, which was creating psychological safety, right? Which is, what are some handles that we can have so that in our own relationships and with the groups or teams that we are in, that we can help to foster and create psychological safety so that people feel safe enough to be authentic and vulnerable. And I think with that, we could probably take it to a landing in half an hour's time. So I'm conscious of the time as well. And I thought, yeah. What do you think, Ethan?
I think that's a great thing to start. Okay, because of time, I will start the whole conversation first. So one of the key parts about this is that I became good at it only because I read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and I literally used it 100% for everything. I assume people are by nature good, which I still want to prove that it's true. Just that the other part of the equation is trauma. Everything that a person does that is negative is usually due to a trauma that they have developed, birth trauma, childhood trauma, the list can keep going. I've dealt with all of them. One of the most important thing about this is that you cannot give psychological safety unless you don't get triggered yourself.
Yep, good point.
And we talk about the highest level of psychological safety is that the relationship can be challenged. The ideas and the beliefs can be challenged. And I say this with what I love. There's this one scene in so this goes back to religion a little bit, but it's a scene in Orange is the New Black where there's this lady who converted to Judaism, and she said to question is to love God, which was very interesting, right? And I thought it was a very interesting concept on psychological safety, that the ability to question is, for her, the form of faith. And when I talk about this, I also talk about this on the friendship level. Can I question whether I want you as my friend? The fact that I can question the relationship means that I have enough psychological safety about the relationship. If I can question my relationship with my parents, with my friends, with my partner, with whoever, it is the beginning of psychological safety. If any questions cannot be touched within that space, there is lack of psychological safety. If ideas are not entertained in that space, there is no psychological safety. And I see that as a very interesting point to look at, because if we have taboos that we do not talk about, that creates a lack of psychological safety. And I say this also because in my training in psychotherapy, one of the major things that they always say is the best therapists are the most tolerant of gray, meaning they can take anything that the person says. If the person is a murderer, they still can listen to the person and understand and empathize and love the person. That's how strong psychological safety needs to go in order for you, like how much you need to tolerate in order for you to be giving everybody psychological safety. And that's where we talk about creating, right? Creating psychological safety.
So it's interesting when you talk about you can only create psychological safety provided you don't get triggered yourself, right? So does that mean that you can't quite create psychological safety if you don't yourself feel psychologically safe? Yes.
Perfectly on point.
Okay. Then that will come back to how do you make yourself feel psychologically safe, right? In front of, I mean, if I had a murderer sitting in front of me, sharing with me all the stuff that he's planning to do, like go murder someone or something, I don't know that. I mean, how do you not get triggered by that?
Oh,
how do you feel safe?
I literally don't get triggered by that because I mean, I was attached to IMH. I've heard this kind of stories before. So one of the major things about this is that you need to know why the person thinks this way, how the person thinks this way, and only by understanding the person can you stop the person. When you try to restrict by controlling the situation, and this is a psychology understanding I've learned a lot along the way, is that you can only change something you love, you understand, and you love. That means you fully accept, right? You cannot change anything that you don't understand. And learning that was a very key part of it. So I actually delved into the minds of serial killers and how they actually think and everything to decide whether I will get triggered by them.
Okay, so
Kind
what,
of put
what would be a way to make, I mean, if I don't feel psychologically safe, I don't feel psychologically safe, right? Then what do I do about it?
Actually, one of the most interesting thing is actually EFT is a very effective way of doing that, and I want Patrick to talk about it.
Hey, Patrick, that's why I asked you to join us, right?
Wow. I don't know what to say.
So we're learning how to do EFT now.
By the way, I'm asking Patrick to do a talent showcase session for us.
Okay.
Now Patrick is like, oh no, I can't run away anymore.
Well, I could be. I'm not going to talk about EFT now, but I want to, I could relate to a lot of what you mentioned, Ethan. I realize I see some patterns in my life recently. Yeah, the past few months. I had some I had some cases where the person felt psychologically safe with me, and the person began to open up. But after a while, it starts to trigger me, because like for one case, the person will be like texting me non-stop for 3.5 hours, and it happened like repeatedly, right? So yeah, so and like in the 3.5 hours, some of it will be like very bad ranting. Yeah. So when you have like non-stop spamming of negativity over time, it really gets at you. And so I realized that I've got more than one case where the person feels psychologically safe, and then the person begins to infringe on my boundaries to the point where I cannot take it anymore. And then I just lose it. Yeah, and I have to tell the person off more than once. Yeah. Yeah, because I can't handle this, like this is an infringement on my time, on my energy, right? Yeah. So so I see it as a I see it as a repeated pattern since it happened more than once. So I'm trying to figure out how does this work? I help someone to feel psychologically safe,
but you don't feel psychologically safe yourself after that.
And then after that, the person begins to vomit all the trash and garbage at me without any consideration. Yeah, repeatedly.
Okay, so this is literally like my playground now, because I literally have spent the last 7-8 months of my life learning to deal with it.
Right.
I think that's why the Office Matters came about, actually, and having to go through another round of that. It is really, really tough to draw boundaries with a person once you start helping them. And this is something that any therapist, any coach, any trainer would know very well, right? Once they open up to you, you're like, yeah, and then they start crossing the boundaries left, right, center. And then they start lying to you. And then they start doing all kinds of things that actually infringe into your boundaries or, you know, into your space. This is where the lines blur. So it happens very often when you're dealing with people with personality disorders. Yeah, and personality disorders are probably the most underdiagnosed stuff out there, because having studied psychiatry, just another background, I quit medical school, so I was studying psychiatry beforehand. One of the major things about this is that I learned so much about psychological disorders that I started recognizing personality disorders are very common, where they come from. And a lot of the space that I've been developing has been learning how to accept all these people, right? Only in the last 8 months have I learned to start drawing lines around them. So today, actually, I was actually sitting down with my business partner and going, how do you learn to defend yourself? I've never done so before. He starts with 0%. I start with 100%. So when it comes to trust. So I was trying to learn from him, his world of when is the stopgap measure for me to stop allowing the person to get it through. This is where boundaries come in, right? Like Henry Cloud, right? But as a therapist or as a healer or as a helper, how do you draw the boundaries? That's where the problem really lies. Because in this communication, right now, like I literally have people who cross my boundaries all the time, like all the time. It's a very normal thing because like I seem like the nice guy, everybody can cross my boundaries. I've learned how to stop that by saying no to certain grounds. And this is where ground rules and engagement rules as a therapist or a helper is really, really key. What happens is that thankfully, most of the people I was coaching learned how to respect my boundaries, or they are respectful people to begin with. But when some people come and cross the boundaries because they have some other personality disorder or there are some issues, it bugs the hell out of me. That's when I need to draw some boundaries. Then there comes the question, right? It's, what is it that you want out of this relationship for yourself? What is it that you need to maintain for yourself such that you feel safe? And then all these kind of things, questions need to appear. Because if you don't feel psychologically safe yourself, you're never going to engage on the level that allows the person to be safe too. But the person usually destroys safety themselves. There's another term that I wrote in my book all the way back. We call it safety conundrum. There are people who, once you have psychological safety, they destroy them on their own, right? There are people who destroy psychological safety no matter how safe the space is, right? They will destroy it at all costs because they prefer not feeling safe. So then it's about engaging them and drawing the boundaries very clearly. So one of the disorders that I learned very well in medical school is called borderline personality disorder. And when we talk about borderline personality disorder, it is a disorder where you need to put a lot of rules on the lady. Usually these are ladies, because the male version often comes out as antisocial, which also comes with a bunch of rules, boundaries and regulations for them to manage their own behavior, right? Those actually help them. Even though it seems like tough love, if you do it kindly, it works well. And in fact, that's how we actually can create psychological safety. Boundaries are actually really important in creating psychological safety. And that's actually a wonderful thing that you're sharing about, Patrick, because that is the hardest thing for helpers to do. Especially as the creator of psychological safety, you feel like the perpetrator of psychological safety if you draw boundaries. However, it is fundamental for you to draw the boundaries for yourself. So there is a trauma healing part so that you don't get triggered by certain things. But if they infringe on your boundaries, that's a different story altogether. How do I draw the boundaries? How do I protect myself? How do I make sure that I have the space? Mahesh?
I think I had a similar example like Patrick, and I think people like Alex who have developer, and I also have developer. When do you draw the line? Because Alex, as a developer, what happens is when somebody starts talking and you're in the developer mode, you tend to give more, right? You want to help that person, you want to make them improve, etc., etc. Now, once they get their psychological safety, they tend to believe that they have all the 24/7 support from us to develop. And they keep asking you, questions which are so silly, which they could do it themselves, right?
Yep.
So I think to your point, maybe when you draw the line, maybe irrespective of the type of engagement, we should set the boundaries at the start. Once you give a rope, then they will sit on you. The best thing is say, start, boss. These are the rules. This is that. You don't disturb me outside this 1 hour of fixed time. Don't send me messages. Don't do this, do that. Otherwise, they were sending me 10, 12 messages in a day, as if I was their personal assistant trying to help them to develop, all the time.
So, can I take that question?
Alex, no, yeah, I wanted you to take the question. It's wonderful.
Yeah. So, I as a developer, I face the same thing, right? Especially when it's someone that we want to help, and that's why I spent the last about a year, I think, right, Ethan, working through boundaries with Dr. Henry Cloud's videos to set those boundaries for myself, because
and a lot of conversations with me about it.
Yeah, I had lots of conversations with Ethan about boundaries and responsibility and consequences and things like that. So one of the things that I realized when this happens is because we fail to draw boundaries for ourselves, and we can't draw boundaries because we aren't clear what it is that's important to us and what we want to protect. Because that's exactly what boundaries are, right? Boundaries are property lines to protect what is yours, right? So anything that crosses that line, you're saying no, that you stay outside of this fence. So whenever someone crosses a boundary, so like Mahesh or Patrick, when someone comes and pour out everything to you 24/7, you lose something. You lose your time. You could lose your time with your family. You could lose your maybe it's your own private time, maybe your time with hobbies, whatever it is, like something that's important to us that we want to protect, and therefore we get frustrated. So first and foremost, I think it's important that I've learned for myself is to recognize what is it that I want to protect, what's important to me, and once that is clear, it makes it easier for me to say no to the other person and to draw those lines, right? And I'll go like, okay, look, I'll love to talk to you about this issue. I have time next Friday or whatever it is. So you can make it very clear to people that you're still creating a space for that person. If they want to talk, there is a certain time, but this is what I can offer and this is what I can do for you. And they can choose to take it or they choose not to take it. Now, as a pastor or as someone who offers help, sometimes people get angry and you'll go like, hey, how can you do this to me? You're supposed to help me. Sorry, but I'm going to use the pastor thing quite a bit because that's kind of example I have in my head. So like, you're a pastor, you're supposed to help me now. It's like, as a pastor, your life is not your life. Your life belongs to your congregation, that you have to give everything. But that's not true, right? It can, that's why when we are clear about boundaries, say, look, my first commitment is to my family, first to God, then to my family, to my children, and then to the congregation, to the people that I help, right? So I have this much time for you, and this is my boundary, and then I draw it. And if they don't like it, too bad, they don't like it. They can get angry, they can be upset, they can shout, they can be unhappy, that's their problem. And when we recognize that when we start drawing boundaries, people will push back and people will be unhappy, and it is normal. It becomes a lot easier to start, expect that people are pushing back and that this is normal reaction and let them deal with it. And then they'll walk away and the reality will hit them and they will find other ways to solve their problem and not be dependent on you. So that's what I thought was interesting. And I actually learned this whole thing about boundaries and helping people from this guy called Danny Silk. So he's a pastor as well from, I think it's Bethel. Oh. So he has this program called People Helping People. And I bought that years ago. I was watching it and that was the exact example that he used. So someone needed help from him, went to him, asked for help. And he said, I need to spend time with my son. So take my son out for, can't remember, a game or his birthday or something, right? And I said, no, how can you do that? My situation is more important. I said, yeah, I hear you. I'm setting time for you and I can speak to you in 2 weeks' time or whatever it is. So keep it calm, keep it normal, just set your position and just draw a boundary. but he is able to do it because he knew what his own priorities were in the first place.
I think there's a lot of developers or empathy people. We have a lot of difficulty, even though my empathy is number 23, right? We had this joke about this, Alex. But what happens that, like, because I've been functioning as an empathetic person for such a long time, it's very hard for me to say no to people who are in the middle of a crisis, even though after when I meet them, it's not actually a crisis. Have you been in that situation?
Do you feel cheated? Do you feel
Yes.
cheated after that? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like, really? Like, you called me for that? Like, seriously? Right? Like, but I had this whole upbringing where I believe that, you know, I cannot feel this way or violated by the other person. Actually, that's also one of the main reasons why I kind of failed in my own relationships. It's because I let my partners walk all over me when it mattered to me. And then I will resent them and I'll feel psychologically unsafe. It will spiral over, it will hurt the relationship and it will keep going worse. So as the giver in the relationship, I actually made the relationship worse by overgiving.
And actually, there's a reason to why we overgive as well, right?
Always
So,
feel inadequate, but for me,
say again?
it's always because I felt inadequate for me.
Yeah. So okay, this is my learner, right? I started reading up on attachment theory, right? And attachment theory sometimes, or rather, does explain a lot of our motivations and why we behave in a certain way. So Ethan, your description sounds like a ambivalent attachment style, right? So I also think I have ambivalent attachment style, whereby I get worried of, you know, losing relationships and people moving away, and then I also get clingy and all sorts of fun. I go like, why am I like that? So I started reading on an attachment theory, which is very interesting. So you're keen to kind of explore it for yourself and understand why certain things are triggered. Attachment theory is a fantastic thing to figure out and learn. In fact, someone who does social work told me that attachment theory is the foundation of social work. I don't know how far that's true.
It's true.
But a social worker told me, yeah, okay. So if you want to find out more about why you behave a certain way, what your triggers are, especially to those who are close to you, go read up on attachment theory. Very interesting.
I think with that, so attachment theory then affects your ability to take care of yourself and other people and all this kind of stuff. So your psychological safety comes first before you create a psychological safety for other people.
Yep.
I think that's the most important thing I wanted to share today, actually, because I'm learning it myself.
Yeah.
And so to add on to, I don't know, Ethan, what I'm hearing is so to establish my own psychological safety, I have to draw boundaries. Correct?
Absolutely.
If I'm wrong, because that's what I'm hearing so far into the conversation.
Absolutely. You got it perfectly right. You need to draw the right boundaries. When I say draw boundaries, doesn't mean you draw with a 10-mile radius and say, everybody get out of my space, right? So it's about drawing the right boundaries. So I'm breaking it down into people I can have conversations with about the relationship. People I can have conversations with about things that matter to me. People who I can have conversations with about my emotional state, right? All these different things, these categories or topics are different people can handle it. Some people cannot handle it. Knowing who and what they are and drawing the boundaries according to that is really important. This also goes back to your clients or the people you're helping. If you cannot talk to them about the relationship, do not take them on.
Yeah.
If they cannot respect your space, do not take them on. This is something I learned the hard way. So it's also absolutely that, right? So that's why boundaries, knowing boundaries in intimate layer level is actually going to help you a lot.
But
That's
it's not just boundary. Sorry, Ethan, you go first, then I will add on.
No. You can continue. I'm done, but it's Jeffers who was talking.
Oh, sorry. Jeffrey, you can carry on, then I'll add on.
No, I found some similarities because I think the space that we work as coaches, or I think like consultants, we call it contracting, right? And part of contracting, I think Palin will be familiar with it as a trainer, right? You contract with whoever client you are, and even as I work in teams, I also contract like simple things like how do we communicate with one another, how do we make decisions. And then you get to know who they are, and then the ground rules come in, etc. in our team meetings, because it is very important that if you don't establish that, then later on you get a lot of teething issues lah. Like, hey, how come these are you walk over my boundaries, but it was not explained. That I didn't know that was your boundaries. And I just wanted to point that out because that is what that comes back as a, I mean, what is happening on a day-to-day basis lah. As well. Yeah.
Excellent. So in the corporate context, definitely having clear structure and having people adhere to certain structure that makes it safe. So for example, if you have rules that says that, there shouldn't be name calling, for example, which is not professional anyway, and you actually enforce that, and if someone violates it, someone comes in and, manages it, it does create psychological safety, right? The other thing about boundaries and psychological safety is this. For those of us who have children, and I learned this in Sunday school, right? Having boundaries help children feel safe. And that's why children are testing boundaries all the time. They need to know where the boundaries are, where's safe and where it's not safe. And then they know that anything within that space is where they are safe. So learning from what I learned in Sunday school, then drawing boundaries and helping people to see, where that safe space is part of helping people to feel psychologically safe. And then I have one final thing to add. Sorry, I'm quite talkative today, I realize.
It's your pet topic now. It's great.
Yeah, it's not, but it's interesting because when Ethan, you spoke about triggers, it brought the story to my head, right? So for those of you who have been with me for a while know that I have a godson who's a teenager, who I've come to care a lot for. And okay, that's kind of a stupid thing, right? So one of the things that happened much early in the relationship, I asked him, hey, so tell me, what do you think about me? How do you feel? What did I do well? It's coaching thing, right? So it's like, I think I appreciate the relationship a lot. What I like about it is that you make a lot of effort into, spending time and trying to catch up with me. Then I said, okay, cool. So what could I do better? Stupid question. And then he said, actually, we meet quite often and I feel quite stressed. So a teenager, right? And then you go like, so we meet quite often. He feels the pressure of needing to meet me regularly. And I got triggered instantly. And I went like, what do you mean? It's like, wow, I'm doing so many things for you. I care for you. I do this. I bring you go bowling, blah, blah, blah. And then you tell me you feel pressured. What does that mean? And I instantly felt rejected. So, I mean, on hindsight, right? I went like, shit. And so I tried to give him space after that, but I did it very badly.
We're all humans.
Totally did it very badly. I like, okay, so I try not to talk to this person, when I try not to talk to him because I wanted to give him space, it came out very badly. He felt pressure. He felt, and we spoke about it later. So that's why I went into looking at things like attachment theory, because I realized that triggered me. And he felt totally safe telling me what was on his mind, right? He just like, I just feel that, having to meet you every week feels like pressure. And that was a perfectly fine, normal statement from any teenager who probably wants to spend time playing. So that's why I thought the trigger part was very interesting. And this had totally nothing to do with boundaries. Right? This was not a boundary issue. This was a pure, Alex had an issue with feeling rejected because of his own attachment style.
But it is a boundary issue because you violated his boundary afterwards when he has already established a boundary with you.
Yes. Okay, yes. In that point, yes. So it wasn't that I didn't. Okay, so it's a boundary issue on his part, right? When he said certain thing and I couldn't respect that, or I felt rejected because he told me something, and then I destroyed the psychological safety after that. So I went back and then had to work things out and figure out why did I behave in a certain way. So so what I'm saying, I guess, is that if we take personal responsibility for creating psychological safety, it's about respecting the other person's boundary, definitely, but it's also about understanding what triggers us to react instead of respond. And I think that when I reacted instead of responding, I destroyed. After that, I have to do a lot of damage control and try to figure out why on earth I did stupid things like that. But yeah,
we had a great conversation over.
We had great conversations over and talk about boundaries and about teenagers and individuating and stuff. So and we had plenty of conversations. But come back to the point, it's about understanding our own triggers, because if we cannot manage our triggers well, it becomes very difficult to create that psychological safety. And that was my takeaway. And I think we could go takeaways now. So that was my key takeaway. Mahesh.
So I think the problem also arises when we are dealing with family members, we are dealing with friends, and you're dealing with clients. I think there are three different situations.
Yeah.
Because the client is paying you, you're also hesitant to draw the boundary too stringently, right? Because in many companies, there's always this feedback loop. So if I'm too strict with my coachee and I say, "Boss, this is not, I mean, this is out of scope, this is not up for discussion," he can just go back to his boss or the manager and say, "But this coach is not even cooperating." What I tell him, he says, is out of bounds, because there is also a communication gap between the person who hires you as a coach and the person who actually gets coached. So we don't know what communication has happened between them. So when you draw some boundaries, they say, "What is this? This is my problem," and you're saying it's out of bounds. This is my problem, but you're saying, this is out of scope. So what is the use of getting coached? Okay. So I think small examples as you're coaching on what is out of bounds, you say, "Oh, I'd love to," as somebody said, "I'd love to discuss it, but let's keep the hiring manager in the loop." For example, he may have a very serious personal problem, but you're being hired by the company to solve his leadership qualities. But if he sticks to this issue of his own personal problem, "Mahesh, what do I do? What do I do?" And every time he talks about, that is more weighing on his head than his performance or promotion, right? So I think it's a tricky situation. So we have to balance between who the stakeholder is and how much you balance it.
Yeah, and I think it's great. Like, that's where the space for conversation needs to happen, right? Like, if there's no conversation, there's no chance for this to be recovered or to even be repaired after all of that, right? The relationship. So there's this whole institute called Institute of Therapeutic Rupture. There's for therapists and the Therapeutic Alliance Rupture, that they talk a lot about what happens when your client starts being unhappy with you.
Yeah, correct.
How do you manage that? And therapeutic rupture is actually a beautiful thing, because it if you handle it well, every argument you have with your client actually increases the relationship that you have in the future. It actually builds rapport. So what people talk about rapport on the surface level is rapport on a very level 1. So you're talking about 4 levels of psychological safety, right? You only can get level 4 after you have gone through enough troubles with the person, have argued it out with the person, have had conflict and recovery before you feel the level 4 psychological safety. Yeah, that's something that is quite fun for me to learn about along the way. So with that, because I know the timing is 9:30, let's just go one round of what we have learned today. I think one of the most important things is psychological safety it has multiple levels. Yep. Psychological safety has multiple levels, and in order for you to create psychological safety for others, you need to be psychologically safe yourself. And in order to do so, there needs to be boundaries in place, and that can be a whole topic on its own, right? So, but because in different contexts, right? Like, how do you deal with clients? How do you deal with different people? But the most important thing here is knowing what you're protecting. And I loved Alex talking about that. So, but with that, I would like everybody to kind of share their own learnings. So Alex, would you like to arrow people? Because I prefer it if you do so.
Let's start with, how's Eugene? What's the way?
Huh? I was just writing some notes. I don't know what else to add, leh.
No.
Your reflections,
not to add. Yeah, what's your takeaway from today's discussion?
Okay, to be honest, I'm still trying to digest because it's quite a new kind of topic for me, and then there's a lot of points that are floating around. But the gist of it is really just knowing yourself, knowing what you can accept, what you don't accept, and then being able to actually voice it out to some other people in a very kind manner. Yeah. I think the important thing, one important point that was brought out just now was you cannot control the emotions of other people. So most of the time, I realized that what happens is that, paiseh lah, if I say that, how is that person going to think of me? Yeah, and it prevents me from drawing proper boundaries with other people, even though, it's important for me to do so. Like I'm already starting to feel uncomfortable, and then, but right here, he's my friend, or she's my friend, what should I say, that kind of stuff. Yeah, but I feel like recognizing that you cannot control what other people feel or react is a very powerful thing that I think I need to learn also. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. So Eugene, we're going through a series of Dr. Henry Cloud's videos during our meetup sessions on our regular Saturday meetup session. So if you're keen to find out more, let me know.
Okay.
Yeah. Mahesh, how about you? Take away.
Yeah, so I think it's a fantastic topic because in addition to this coachee or counselees relationships, due to COVID, lots of people now are working from home all over the world. I'm sure in Singapore also. So what has happened is this is a classical place where there seems to be no boundaries. Because earlier we used to go to office 9 to 5. Now you're sitting at home, but it seems to be 9 to 5 or 5 to 9 in the morning. There are no boundaries of time. So you have a client, a boss in the US, you have somebody in Australia, you have somebody in Singapore, and everybody just shoots off and fixes meetings and calls you on a call. Now, because it's a job and people are losing jobs, people are scared not to attend meetings. But there is a very thin line between their personal life and official life. And this is causing a lot of stress within the family because wife is on a call, husband is on a call, children is in a school call, parents are on personal WhatsApp and Zoom. So the whole house is all clogging the same bandwidth of not only the actual bandwidth of your telecom provider, but the bandwidth of the mind, time, space. So how do you draw the line here? It's so difficult. People are scared to draw a line.
That's where the psychological safety comes back into the picture, right? Like if you are well prepared for all these kind of things to happen, like you have created a buffer for this kind of period of time, it would have been possible. But sadly, most of us never predicted this. And it really depends on how much lines you want to draw, because then you might want to go back to caveman kind of lifestyle for like to the next 6 months. I mean, it's something that like I've also questioned a lot on, right? Like, where do I draw the lines? How do I draw the lines? And one of the major things about this, and this is something I realized after doing The Office Matters, the more you draw lines, the more people respect you, which is true. In fact, once you draw the line, people will start shutting up and start respecting you more, especially when you still deliver the work. So actually, right, to worry about losing your job and therefore taking on all the calls and everything is counterintuitive to if you understand how power dynamics work and what will get you the respect from other people.
Yeah, you lose respect.
Yeah, but I guess the problem also is in a matrix organization, you don't know who's your actual boss and who can influence decision making about your career, about your future, about your team, etc., etc. So, and I'm sure, Alex, in JLL, you have this whole matrix organization, right? So who pulls the strings? So this psychological safety is not at all ending because of the matrix organization.
Which is interesting because we never got to the topic, right, Ethan, about the way I confronted my boss.
Yeah.
Right, Ethan. So we never got to that. But part of it also I felt was that when I was more able to speak up what I thought and make my stand while still allowing my bosses to make the decision, I think I gained a lot more respect. I didn't respect me before. He had, I thought, and ideas, right? So I've come to the stage where to understand where I'm coming from. I threw in my own ideas. I gave my pros and like, what do you want to do? And threw the responsibility solely back to him, right? But I think part of it was when people are clear about where you stand, I think people respect you more.
That's true. That's true.
So
And
actually,
even if you disagree.
so actually that's exactly it. Because if you give them psychological safety, if you let them know you have no ill intent, and you're here to challenge the idea because of a bigger purpose, it is okay. They will feel, okay, that's a fair point. But I still want to make the decision. Go ahead, it's yours. Right? That kind of conversation will allow that thing to happen. In fact, that's the whole premise of my whole super collaboration, which is what I care a lot about, because when people can healthily disagree, you can get to the objective answers. When people cannot healthily disagree, you get all the wrong answers, no matter how good the answers are.
And one of the things that we covered for in the subset of my meetup group, where we had the VIP group to contribute to Zoom subscription, we went through the 5 dysfunctions of a team. Right? So the first dysfunction is actually lack of trust. The second one is fear of conflict. Right, and the third one is lack of commitment.
Yep.
Then accountability. Then
results.
Yeah. So first layer is always trust. So I'm very glad that Jeffer spoke about the trust equation. I think that's very helpful in helping us to understand what trust is. In the 5 dysfunctions of the team, we build trust by humanizing people in our organization. So humanizing, we start talking about, what's your childhood like, what things like, to recognize that boss or no boss, colleague or no colleague, we're all humans. Right? So once we humanize people, we start to be willing to be a bit more vulnerable. And then in an organization, it's the leader who needs to lead the way to demonstrate vulnerability, to create that safe space. And then we can have healthy conflict. So I like to call it healthy conflict, right? Because without real conflict, you get what's called false harmony. Everybody, yeah, okay, agree. And then they leave the meeting back mouthing one thing, that will never work. Instead of actually showing their ideas and talking through and actually solving a problem, right? And if people don't actually talk about the problem and sharing opinions, they cannot have commitment because they've never really talked about their own opinions. And if they have not really committed to it, you cannot call for accountability, and therefore, there can be no attention to results. So that's in a nutshell the 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? Really great stuff.
The only problem with this is activating in Asian culture, because Asian culture looks at it very differently.
Yes, agree.
Cool. All right. I think the next person to share a bit of their thoughts.
Nana, takeaway for today.
Okay, I would say the setting boundaries, because setting boundaries sometimes it's really hard when you're close to that person. When you're with that person for a long time, then you start to be close with that person. Then it's a little bit hard to set boundaries. That is something that is really difficult to do, and of course you need to do it because you can't handhold that person forever. Okay, then also I think just now one of you was talking about this working from home, setting boundaries, what time to stop work. That one is also a type of boundaries, I guess. Like my boss, he has a rule. He will not work after 10 p.m. at night. So anything, and you need to find him before 10 p.m. So normally I try to find him early if I want to talk to him, because he's stationed in USA. But for me, I'm not so clear cut. Sometimes he will message me at 1 a.m. Then I'm still awake. I'm still watching TV. You see, then I can't help but just reply that email. Just reply. It's just a 1 sentence. Then after that, he will come back with more emails. I was like, why did I reply him in the first place? I should have just ignored him, pretend to go and sleep. Every time I regret. Every time I reply. Every time I regret. Next time I will do it again.
That's a boundaries issue, Nana.
Yes, that's why that's the boundary issue. Every time I hate myself, why I reply him, and then after that, the next time, I do it again.
So the last round, where we went through self boundaries, one of the things is recognizing the consequence of what you're doing, and that actually helps.
Yeah, because I like to clear things immediately when they come. I didn't like to wait. The moment I wait for tomorrow, I may forget.
The issues of hyper responsiveness, which is what you're just describing, is that you have no time for yourself and you're permanently on call. And having worked in the hospital, being permanently on call is the worst feeling, even if you get sleep.
And it burns you up.
Yes.
Yes, very
Yeah.
fast. Very fast.
So then I'll be very curious to know what your top 5 strengths are. You sound like you have achiever or activator somewhere in your top 5.
I don't know, but I like challenges.
Okay, so
Achiever for sure.
yeah, sounds very achiever. So if you have not done your Clifton Strengths assessment, like most of us have, I highly recommend that you go look at it, because it would also very much describe or explain why do you feel motivated to do certain things, or why do you behave in a certain way.
Okay, I think just now Ethan was talking about this the rapport building. Some scammer may try to they know that you are good in this, or they know that you are bad in this. They will use that to build rapport with you. I mean, when he's talking about that, I'm thinking, I see Alex, Ethan, you all have put in your 5 strengths here. Okay, then isn't that a chance for bad people to exploit that as well? Like now I know Alex is full of empathy, you see. So if I want to build rapport with him, I may just play on his empathy, because I know that he's full of understanding for people. See, stand in the shoes of other people. Yeah.
That's a great
So it's
question.
like-
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. I actually want to jump into answer this quite quickly, because it's a very useful thing to answer. I would say straight up is I am an open book to most of my friends. I trust people 100% and I share my stories like that. Like Alex would know this, Jeffers knows this, right? And then in Palin, I barely know you, but you probably know a lot about me just because of the way I share things. I think one of the major things about this is that when you know who you are and what you are and self-aware, you know how to guard. And that's a very important part for me. So it's not about whether the person knows what I am, it's about whether I have the guards in place.
And I think the usefulness of this profile is that it creates that self-awareness. So I know what my risks are. I know where my red flags are. And I kind of, like what Ethan says, I know, well, roughly how to guard it, right? Even though sometimes certain things are subconscious, so it takes a while before I'm conscious. But I think whether or not displaying it makes... Okay, so this is an interesting thing when we do a profile like this in an organization. Some people feel very vulnerable. They go like, I do not want other people to know. Which is very interesting, right? Because that immediately tells me that trust is low. And then we go straight to dive with the issue of what the belief is, and before we get to the profile. But if it comes to con men and con artists, trust me, they do not need your profile to con you.
They read people very well.
Yes.
They do not need your profile. They won't con you anyway. So for those who are really out to get you, they will get you whether or not they have your profile.
So one tip for Nana is the fact that people who are hyper responsive is that if you think that you're going to sleep at 10 p.m., even if you're watching TV, at 10 p.m., please put your devices off till next day morning, 7 o'clock. Because once it pings and you hear it, then the mind will not allow you to be at rest till you see it. So the better way is to change that routine and stop the cue. The cue is the ping, right? And then your routine is to respond. And the reward is that, I'm always punctual, I always respond on time, etc., etc. So the cue should be stopped.
Great tip,
So
Mahesh.
please put your device off. My device is off between 10 and 7. If somebody is so urgent, family, they'll call me on my other landline or phone. But this mobile is definitely used more for official purposes. So please keep it off for 7 hours. Get a good night's rest. And maybe when you respond with much more creative ideas next day morning.
You could set parental controls for your own phone, I think.
Be your own parent.
Yeah.
Be your own parent, yes.
Screen time, past certain time, everything.
Yeah, the thing is that my boss are all in USA, so when I sleep, they all wake up and start to do work. When I do work, very quiet, I can do work because they are sleeping. Yeah, that's why I need to set this type of boundaries.
I have 2 phones because of that. One is work phone, one is personal phone. After work phone goes one side. I won't attend to it anymore. Yeah, because I know that I'll be like that as well. Yeah.
No, but if you have a lot of friends across the globe, you'll keep getting messages anytime. Especially for a big group, right? Somebody in the US, somebody in Australia, somebody's awake. And when they're awake, they send messages.
Yep.
So you need to put all devices off for 7 hours because that's your sleep time. And that's where your physical body rejuvenates, right? It's not enough to only rejuvenate your mind, you have to rejuvenate your body also.
As a near perma on-call person, right, because of the kind of friendships I have, one of the major things about this is learning to say, guys, I'm off. Rent all you want. My phone is on the other side of the room. You can share anything you want. I'm not going to respond. Just know that it's not personal. It's just that I need my space. Bye.
Okay.
All the best, now.
Thank you for all your advice. Yeah, sorry, Alex, you wanted to say something. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say, and Ethan does that very well. He needs his space. You just tell, hey, look, guys, something's happening. I just need this time for myself. I'll get back to you when I can. It's totally fine.
Yeah, he see me done that too. So yeah.
He will just disappear into his man cave, and then he'll tell me he never sleep for the whole night, and he'll come up with some exciting idea. It's like, huh, what's happening?
Yes, that's very Ethan.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Ethan.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for all your advice.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lana. Patrick, takeaway today?
I think that I realized to have a sustained environment of psychological safety, that I need to untrigger my existing triggers. I need to untrigger the triggers that are within me. So if I don't get triggered, I can maintain, I can feel safe, and I can continue to help the person feel safe.
If you get a chance, read this book. You can read it, see it?
Yeah, The Power of Habit.
Very good book, how to change the routine when you get the cue.
Yep. So there's on the at the other level, right, where I deal with unconscious traumas, there's other things. I mean, EFT, if you say you use EFT, I think one of the major things right now here you have that, if I'm not wrong about the trigger for you, would be, if I may just suggest, explore the concept of why you cannot say no to a problem when it appears.
How to say no? Yeah.
Yeah, why you can't say no? Why you can't feel like, if you're trying to find, because you do EFT, right? So you have to find a specific memory and specific emotion. In order for you to achieve that, I would really recommend just go and figure out for that particular response that you have, which is, I cannot let the person go. Cannot let the person just die, right? Like that over responsibility, a hyper responsibility over somebody's lives is probably what you have also. Like I say that that's what I found for myself. So I'm just saying it as a potential way that you can find it. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Jeffers.
For me, similarly, I think it's the point on your triggers, like your psychology. I mean, the triggers, you need to feel psychologically safe before you can create psychological safety for others, lah. So I think that's a good point. I think an extension to that is like some issues that when you caught yourself, it's feel that it's emotionally heavy, then that is sort of an indicator lah, whether there was already a trigger in place lah. And sometimes the layman can tell you, right? So I think Ethan sort of alluded to this, right? I mean, when we see things and it feels that it's emotionally heavy, usually we felt it's a crisis, but someone else will look at it and say that actually that's nothing. then you sort of know that actually there were already triggers that get built up lah. So just to be aware of that.
Very cool.
My is similar, Patrick and Jeffers said, is the triggers thing. So based on my own story, right, my personal experience was, it's very difficult to create that same degree of psychological safety for other people. Yeah, that was for me. Ethan?
Yep.
For you to wrap up.
I also wrap up, right? So today we really covered, I really like the grounds that we covered, right? So we went from basic ideas on what psychological safety is and like the 4 levels of psychological safety, but a lot of us never really experienced it before. So we went further into the concept of rapport, where it comes from. And because of time, I kind of just sped it up a bit and just started talking about personal space, right? Where you, on a personal level, what's your ability to create a psychological safety? And that's when we really went into like the personal triggers. When you feel safe, then can you share, right? Can you then create a psychological safety for the other person? Because one of my favorite terms, this is something new. Simon Sinek talked about this. The definition of love or trust or vulnerability. I can't remember. The favorite definition of love is to give somebody the power to destroy you, trusting that they won't do that. Where you trust the person with the thing that they can destroy you with. And that's exactly the definition of love to him. Like he was saying that as a definition in one of his videos. And in the same sense, if you're very open to other people and you can share with them what you are, like for example, your top 5 and you don't feel vulnerable, you can share your life story and you don't feel vulnerable, other people will feel psychologically safe because suddenly there's an engagement. Yes, of love is giving someone, yes, thank you, Jeffers. Wonderful quote. One of the major, and this is something that is really, really important. If you don't have psychological safety yourself, you cannot give it to others. And that's really what we actually are really trying to summarize today. And thank you, Jeffers, for that wonderful quote. Simon Sinek says, my favorite definition of love is giving someone the power to destroy you and trusting they won't use it.
Yeah. Oh, I think, thanks, Mahesh. Peilin, did we miss you for takeaway?
Yes, we
I
missed
can
Mei Lin.
I
escape.
think we did. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think we did.
No, you
Thanks,
can't
Mahesh. Thanks, Mahesh. So Peilin, no, you can't run.
Okay. I'll just do a very quick one because I think what I found was useful about setting boundary is knowing what we want to protect. I think a lot of times I might not even know, but I think now thinking back to various incidents, I think I will know if somebody crosses my boundary a few times and I feel irritated or frustrated. That sort of gives me the signal that something that I need to protect there. Yeah.
Very cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peilin. Thanks, Mahesh.
Thanks, everyone. I've actually heard a lot of very authentic sharing today. So thank you for the courage to share all these stories of yours.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I'm glad that you guys feel safe enough to share all the stories.
And okay, so I think that's pretty much the wrap up. Thanks everyone for staying past the time. But I really just thought today's session deserved the extra time because this topic is so important and really covered a lot of ground beyond what we initially planned. So thanks everyone for your sharing stories. Couple of things. Our next session will be in 2 weeks' time. So Ethan, we're doing vulnerability or we're doing psychological safety versus real safety?
Yeah, so the difference between psychological safety versus real safety, meaning how much of it is in your mind versus what is real. This is where I discovered that a lot of people who look at money or safety in a certain manner actually fail to recognize that they're creating their own psychological lack of safety.
So guys, next in 2 weeks' time, following Tuesday, we're going to talk about psychological safety versus real safety. So do come and join us. This is kind of follow-up on psychological safety anyway. And then in 2 days' time, we have our talent showcase session with Mahesh. We're going to do strengths-based business mindset. And so let's a little bit to talk about that. I encourage you to please sign up for the session in 2 weeks' time. So people like Peilin, Jeffers, Patrick and Eugene, Nana, if you'd like to join, you can also go to the meetup group and join there. Let us know. Or join as a elite member so they can attend it for free. So pretty much that's it. Right. Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to stop the recording and Mahesh, you could stay and then we could have a chat for our session in 2 days' time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye.